The Packers take on the Chicago Bears and try to wash the bad taste of a loss to Minnesota out of their mouths and regroup going into the playoffs. What is at stake in this game and what's left to prove? Let's talk it out.
Yeah, I've been wanting this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Okay. Hey. Yeah. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early feeling rich like I'm Kesha.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Sounds Gouda. My name is Jordan Olson and my co-host and best friend over here is Rob Ralph. As always, thanks for being here, listening and thinking about Packers football. Sounds Gouda is a great source for all things Packers, and we're excited to bring you new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So, Rob, we are at the end of the regular season. It is week 18. The Packers have 11 wins. We play division rival Chicago Bears, which have 4 wins. I know we fell short of some of our season goals, but we still got some things out there for us. We got the playoffs upcoming. So currently the Packers are 9.5-point favorites against the Chicago Bears. But tell me some of your thoughts going into this game. You know, the Bears are coming off of that 3-point performance against the Seahawks. But I mean, I guess my big question for you, and we're recording this early in the week, are the Packers going to play? What do we have to play for? What are we thinking about in this game?
Yeah, well, after that performance against Minnesota, obviously LaFleur and company, they're the players as well too. They're obviously upset, I thought if Packers would have came away with a win in Minnesota, this is obviously an easy sit-'em game, or play your backups, I guess I should say. I do, but I think it's going to be, I think they're going to play him for a half, and then I think they're going to sit him for a half, I think. Again, I'm not in Matt LaFleur's head, but just knowing that there is a lot to prove and a lot to gain and a lot to work on still yet, especially after a really, really slow start in Minnesota. But there's also, a lot to lose as well, right? You could get an injury to another really big-time player, both on the defense and on the offense. So, I think coming in, kind of sharpening your tool of your bread and butter, getting Jacob some more work, trying to, and maybe even just more on this one too. Maybe just, every game I think I say this, to run the ball, right? And then marry that up with play action. But maybe this one, you kind of just work on some different passing concepts, maybe some stuff over the middle, maybe, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like the Bears have a decent secondary. And if this is really just it's really a game with nothing for both teams, maybe more specifically better for the Bears because they'll get a better draft position if they continue to lose. But this is a good test them against a halfway pretty good, decent Bears defense. So they could, test some different things as far as the Packers offensive side of the ball goes and try to do some, some new and different types of things. So that's what I would be looking for. Another thing too I wanted to just point out too as well is like when the Packers went to Chicago, we were a fingertip away from Carl Brooks from being 0-5 in the division for the Packers. So I think there is a little bit more to play with this. I think LaFleur is going to be pissed off, rightfully so. I think the players will want to come out, but I think that they play a half and then they bring in the backups for the second half. But that's just my opinion. What about you, Jordan?
I don't think I'm that cut and dry. I think that you're right. I think there's a lot of people that are going to be pissed off, and I'm really hoping that the Packers or players are looking within themselves, and I hope they're freaking pissed off after the result, the momentum that they lost in their playoff positioning. And I think they know that they got to get it right and get it going right now, or their playoff run is going to be over very quickly. And it's still, with the teams we have to play, it still might be over very quickly. But I think that they play until the game is no longer in the balance. If that's one half, if there's a, 27-3 lead at half and they can play their backups,
good point.
Great.
Yeah.
If that means that we go into the third quarter, we go into, 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter and we finally have that, that 3-score advantage and the time is indicating that the starters can sit, I think they play until the game is no longer in the balance. Or, if they play so well, they execute so well. But I think the Packers want to win this game. and the Commanders and the Cowboys will be playing at the same time. So you want to hope that the Cowboys are going to find a way to beat the Commanders, which I don't have a lot of faith in that. A Packers win and a Commanders loss would put them back into that 6th seed and match them up against the Rams, which I like our odds of winning a playoff game, especially against a Ram team that we played really well over the last number of years, a whole lot better than playing that Philadelphia team. But that's where I'm at with the Packers starters play. I think they play them until the game's no longer in the balance. What else I got? So, I mean, like, the other side of that is, are the Bears going to play? Like, they hate the Packers as much as the Vikings. And I mean, clearly I didn't know how much hate the Lions and their fans had for the Packers. They just were never in a position to do anything about it for a while, right? But
Coming out of the woodwork now.
Little brother Bears still hate the Packers and believe, I mean, this will be their Super Bowl, but it's like, they had a chance to beat the Seahawks. They only put up 3 points in that game. I just don't know what kind of effort we're going to see out of them. I would think that they'd want to end the season with a big victory and that they're going to try hard in this game. But I don't know. I mean, where do you think? Do you think the Bears are going to give it everything you got, or you think they're thinking about the golf course?
Well, they're definitely thinking about the golf course. Who isn't when you're knocked out of playoffs as far as that goes, and some of those players are already getting paid. But there's still a lot to prove for Caleb Williams and what he can do. Is he the right person for this franchise? Is he not? They go through this every year, it seems like. He ends up having a pretty decent year, 3,393 passing yards and 19 TDs. They have really good weapons, like we've alluded to on the before the season started on our deep dive into the Bears. So shameless plug, go out and check that out. But really for us and for what I've seen is that this comes down to the Bears' offensive line. Like, their offensive line is their weakest point. So I don't know if they go out and do some free agent signings and get some more talent there for the draft. That's what I would do if I were Ryan Poles. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. My gut tells me that they're probably going to end up playing it through as they kind of look towards their future and what they need, and then their new, head coach. Is that a Ben Johnson or Cliff Kingsbury, who's obviously had success with working previously with Caleb Williams and what he's done over there for the Washington Commanders. Pretty impressive. I think they do. I think they play a full complementary type of game for themselves. Again, too, this is just kind of a testing ground for them. I don't know if it really matters in the grand scheme of things that much for a draft position if they lose. I don't know what that would drop them down to, and there's a whole bunch of different math and statistics you'd have to go through for that. But I don't think it's that big of a margin. So I think that the Bears need to continue to polish their sword as well and prove to themselves too as well for their future that they're building up. So
that's where I lie too. I think there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to play. I don't know. Maybe there's a few individuals that don't feel like they have a lot to prove, like a DJ Moore. We've seen him kind of give up at times, but like Williams has got a lot to play for. There's a lot of like intermediate and back of the end roster guys that are obviously playing for their jobs or next paycheck. They hate the Packers. And yeah, if they win 5 games versus 4 games, they've got their quarterback right now, right? So what's the difference in picking 4th or 6th or 7th or whatever it is to them? Not much. They're still going to get, one of the top tackles in this draft or whoever they decide. I would hope they'd go offensive line. If they do something else, who knows?
Yeah.
So my next question is then, you mentioned it already, but what else do the Packers need to work on this game? I agree with you. I think they need to work on some intermediate passing game concepts. We mentioned that a little bit in the last episode. Tom Brady obviously called that out in the Packers-Vikings game. I don't know what the Bears are going to show them, but if they give them one-on-one looks, I think the Packers wide receivers better be focused on trying to win some one-on-one routes. The other thing I'll say that they need to work on is I think Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love and the staff need to decide what philosophy they're going to take going into the playoffs. Are we the aggressive team that's going to go for it on 4th downs? What is that number for us? Or are we going to take points? Because we've seen Matt LaFleur be wishy-washy in the last few weeks, ultra-conservative through the first half of the season, we've been ultra critical as a fan base, media, podcasters, whatever, about that decision making. Whatever that philosophy is, I think that they need to commit to something.
Yes.
Moving forward, good, bad, or ugly, and at least decide that that's what our take is going to be this season. And if that costs them a game, they get bounced to the playoffs, they need to reevaluate that whole thing going into next season. But I think that they need to pick a side of the line. Which side do we want to be on? We're going to take the points, or we're going to be aggressive and go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's your identity going to be? To me, I think we've seen it this whole year. Bread and butters, run the football, build off play action, off of that. That's how this offense is built to succeed. Now, having Christian Watson in there, that's going to make a massive difference. But you're right. Matt LaFleur, you got to be decisive. You got to go. Obviously, he's getting pumped in stats, analytics, I'm sure, into his ear, percentages, whatever it is. Go, just gut it. Do it by your gut feeling. That's really like the way that how this team is going to roll. The same way we feel it when we're watching the football game on, and you're like, oh, you got to go here. We got momentum, that type of thing. You got to go with that, and you got to decide who you are and what your identity is going to be. Because in Minnesota, that first series, running the football, really, really good. And then I get it. The Josh Jacobs fumble, it hurt. It really did. But then that second series, you got away from that. You got away from that. You got away from your identity. So this game, I totally get it. You could try some different, new types of things, new plays. But really, going into the playoffs, if you are going to beat this juggernaut of what we're going to have to face, you are going to have to be decisive in your play calling. You're going to have to obviously come up with a good game plan. You're going to have a strong identity for what you're going to be, no matter if there's a Josh Jacobs fumble or a mistake or whatever it is, and continue to build and work off of that. And you're going to have to, show up, and the players are going to have to show up too as well. They're going to have to get a sack. They're going to have to go up against these really talented offensive lines. And that secondary is going to have to hold down some plays over the middle. Maybe by a miracle we get a Eric Stokes pass breakup, or maybe possibly an interception. I don't know. I'm just throwing crazy things out there as possibilities. You never know what can happen in the playoffs. But those type of plays, that type of mindset, that can lead us into winning a playoff game or two. Now, can we do that 3 times a row against 3 juggernauts? I highly doubt it, but trying to be rationally optimistic here.
Yeah, the whole Eric Stokes has 2 great games and gets an interception finally and gives them enough hope to sign him on a veteran 1-year deal to bring him back. Would be the worst case scenario for me. I just hope that he plays poor enough that that's an easy decision for them, which hopefully should already be easy. But in terms of snap count, until recently, it doesn't look like it's been that easy for them. So the Bears are a really bad offensive team, 28th in points scored, 29th in pass yards, 25th in rush yards. Now they've got a mid-tier, kind of close to a top 10 defense. Packers are still flirting with that top 10 defense and, pretty safely a top 10 offense. But what are some of the key matchups if the Packers are going to win? And I know we've got a lot of question marks about who's going to play, what kind of effort's going to be given on, for sure the Bears side of the ball. The Packers, I think, have motivation at this point in time. But what do the Packers need to do? Who needs to show up for them to make sure they secure this victory in Green Bay?
Well, I'm going to be looking at the wide receivers versus that pretty good, talented secondary. I'm going to see, what situations that the Bears are going to call man coverage in, and how some of our players can beat that. And not only just that, but then catching the ball. I know what our offensive line and our running game can do. It's been doing it the whole year. Obviously, it is our strength. So my number one thing that I'm going to be watching is how the wide receivers come in, how they act, how they do against their effort too as well. Because you can kind of tell when somebody's kind of given up or not blocking for another wide receiver, right? It's pretty evident. So that's going to be one of my top things. And then also is Christian Watson going to be back? Because that would make a massive difference. I would feel that like if it was slightly on the edge, like he probably could go, but it's not fully, they're going to end up sitting him. Brings it even more to me watching the wide receivers versus that secondary, because you can't have a Christian Watson taking that lid off. You're going to probably get some more man type of coverages. Minnesota showed it, right? Secondary, and Chicago secondary is very good too, especially one of the best cornerbacks in the league in Jalen Johnson. So that's one of my top ones. I know defensively, Chicago's got one of the worst offensive lines. So even if we get 10 sacks, that's still, and until you do it, and you're going to have to do it in the playoffs against an elite offensive line, or come up with a game plan to where you can physically just, get a 3, 4, 5 sack type of game and really just disrupt and move them off, these quarterbacks off their spot. Especially if that's going to be, coming up here against a Jalen Hurts who can kill you in multiple different ways, which is going to make that even more difficult. I know what that's going to test for us. So, and then if you continue to get a Bullard at safety, depending on like if Zane Anderson can't go, I'd be on the other side of the ball. I'd be looking more specifically to see if Bullard / Keyshawn Nixon. I'm always kind of looking a little bit too at Eric Stokes and how he's doing. See if they can make a couple of plays, 1, 2 pass breakups, interception. Carrington Valentine has been playing really well, but I'll be more looking at that back half, your Javon Bullard, to see if he can have a better game.
And the secondary just needs to get healthy and stabilized going into the playoffs, and any kind of, positive performance for them would be good for momentum and their confidence. I agree. The Packers pass rush will produce against this unit. Williams holds the ball way too long, so they'll come away with 4 or 5 sacks by default. Probably be good for guys' contracts and a little bit of confidence. Not sure that means much against the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line, but we've touched on that enough that I won't touch that anymore. I do expect, this is a super chalk answer, but this is kind of a super chalk kind of game to me. It's a trench game. Josh Jacobs should have a big game, and he should be in line to get about 1,400 yards on the ground this season, which
let's go.
Kind of transitioning into score predictions and players to watch. I usually throw it to Rob to give score prediction, but that kind of is a good segue. Josh Jacobs has a chance to have the 4th best season as a Packers rusher. He needs to get to 13,088 yards to pass Amon Green in his 2021 season. Other guys ahead of him, Amon Green had the best Packers season with 1,883 yards in 2003. Jimmy Taylor had 14,074 yards in 1962. Dorsey Levens. Yeah, good old Dorsey. I love Dorsey. That was actually one of my first jerseys as a kid. Right aligned with the time that the Packers were getting good, and I was, becoming a young Packers fan. In 97, I think I would have been in 3rd grade. But Dorsey Levens in 97 had 14,035 rushing yards. So if Josh Jacobs has a little over, 100 yards from scrimmage on the ground here, he should easily put himself safely on that list of best Packers seasons on the ground of all times. I'm going to call for Xavier McKinney to get his 8th interception of the season and kind of put a stamp on the end of the year for him. He's had a phenomenal year. He's been a little quiet in the interception front recently, but I think teams kind of figured out we can't really throw his way. I expect the pressure to help that out this game, and Xavier to kind of put his stamp on the season. And then if Christian Watson plays, I think he'll have a great game. He always plays well against the Bears. So I'm going to say the Packers end up winning this game 27-13, probably somewhere middle of the second half, kind of put that game in their control and kind of play some of the backups and rest a few guys. So what do you think the score of the game is, Rob?
Yeah, and just a player or two to watch from me as well. You alluded to this from this last one. You didn't end up getting this one right. But I'm going to put it back on there. Let's get Jaden Reed the ball. Let's continue to find unique ways to be able to get Jaden Reed the ball. When you get him the ball, he's very good at yards after catch. He's very speedy, very elusive. I understand he had that drop, and that didn't help him in that Minnesota game, but you got to continue to feed him the ball. Showed it in week 1, right, again against the Eagles, just how dynamic of a person, of a player that he can be for this team. He's a couple other games, too, this year. I think all those games, somebody can correct me here if I'm wrong, but the Packers ended up dominating when he's been able to get the ball consistently. So let's please, if this is a test game, a game to get some of your wide receiver one-on-one man coverage, get them open, catch the ball, let's 6, 7, 8 touches of that to go to Jaden Reed because he's just that important to this offense. Defensively, I'm really going to be looking at Javon Bullard. He got cooked. He got cooked a couple of times. He had to go man-to-man coverage against Jordan Addison, who did a really nice stop-and-go route. And Jordan Addison is extraordinarily fast. So, that'd be tough for anybody on that secondary. Then he had the other one to where he bites down on the coverage, double coverage to Justin Jefferson. Their third wide receiver, who's very good as well, Naylor, ended up getting that touchdown. So I'm looking for a Javon Bullard to come back and play really well. Specifically, he's at safety, but I'll still be watching him too if Zane Anderson is back as well too. So I will say that the Packers will end up taking this one 21.
I give you credit. I like it. I took some of the low-hanging fruit and kind of some of the best players this year to kind of win. And you took some guys that you want to see rebound and have some performances, right? And ultimately, that's what we need to put together for the Packers to achieve their goals this season. One quick stat correction, too. I think somewhere along the lines there said Dorsey Levens had like 14,035 yards. Or 35 yards. That would be ridiculous this season. So, you guys are going to listen to this, think I'm crazy. My coffee hasn't quite settled in. But yeah, little stat correction.
Well, we appreciate everybody coming in and taking a listen to us. We know that the last game was not ideal, but you know what? We can get this game, get back on track, and then get some great momentum going into the playoffs. And then really, like 2010, 2011, you never really know. When the playoffs start, you could really come in and you could beat any team. And we've gotten really, really close to beating some of those teams. We just need to be a little bit more consistent. So hopefully we can do that 3 times in a row. We do have new content coming out every Wednesday and every Saturday. So make sure to check that out. We are on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Please make sure to give us a like, sub, and follow us there on those platforms. Appreciate everybody coming in back and taking a listen to us. But until next time, Packers Nation, we hope that you have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night. Take care. Go Pack, go.
Go Pack.
Been wanted this shit forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me. Brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the back.